So Hargrove asked me to come down here today and talk to you all about SEO, entrepreneurship, and stuff like that. But then I saw that there's a lot of writers. Like, who's a writer in the room? Raise your hand. All right. Who's SEO? Okay. Writers 80%, SEO is 20%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the 80% while also being able to answer some SEO-oriented questions. Today I'm going to talk about kind of how I got started from an SEO and writing perspective, how I built basically the largest SEO news site, the largest SEO industry site there is right now, and kind of the ups and downs along the way, because if any of you follow some of the same people I do on Facebook and stuff like that, it's all success story, success story, success story. But like Hargrove was saying, you have to fail first. You have to figure out what works, what doesn't work, learn from that, and take the risks to move on and do something better. So that's what I'm going to do today. First, a little bit about me. I'm originally from Maryland, so I grew up there, went to college. Afterwards, I traveled around the world a lot, but then I lived down here in Tampa for 7 years. I've not been to Tampa St. Pete in 5 years, and I'm just blown away like how much St. Pete has changed and grown. It's amazing. So I'm going to come back this summer. Right now, I live in a place called Awesome Town. It's Valencia, California, right outside of L.A. Yeah. Are you guys from Valencia? Okay. All right. And yeah, Awesome Town. And I'm a huge Ravens fan. My son is now playing flag football. Guess which one he is? He's the 7-year-old. He's the tallest kid on the team and the youngest kid on the team. So he's also a Steelers fan. When he found out he was being put on the 49ers, he did not want to play. He's like, "Daddy, I'm not going." And like, you have to. So he loves it now. So I have to get back. I'm leaving tonight. I won't be on the yacht, unfortunately, but I have to get back to take him to practice tomorrow. So I'm involved with a lot of different stuff. I'm mostly known for SEJ. I also have an agency, which you'll see at the top, we'll kind of see, Foundation Digital. And recently, I've been writing a little bit less about SEO, because just to be honest, I wrote about SEO for like 15 years. Like, there has to be a time when you can want to do something a little bit different. So right now, I more or less handle the webinars, podcasts at SEJ, manage the team, and then do SEO for my agency clients. But at the same time, I've been writing on more business-oriented sites, like Small Biz Trends, Tech.co, et cetera, and Forbes, and trying to spread that out a little bit. It's been really good for me. So that's where you'll find me online. At Foundation Digital, we're blessed to be able to work with some cool companies. So we work with ESPN, and ESPN is like, if you can think of a client visit that's awesome and through the roof, going up to visit ESPN and seeing like, there are really like mascots walking around in the office and stuff like that. So we work with a lot of companies over at Foundation Digital. And recently, we won a bunch of awards last year. So we won 2 U.S. Search Awards, Best Content Marketing and Best SEO Team. The Drum, which is a publication out of the UK, they gave some awards last year. So everything's really cool at Foundation Digital. But one thing I will say is what I learned about doing client work with SEO and publishing, I did it writing and publishing myself. You can't write if you can't relate, right? So you have to go through that and do it yourself and then consult on the client side. So this really helped everything else. So anyway, enough bragging. How did I build up SEJ? How did I do this and that? Well, we have to go back in time. So we're going back in time to the year 2000, which was kind of funny in 1998 when he did this, right? But okay, back to the year 2000. I was in the year 2000. So I'm from Maryland. I graduated. I was the first in my family to graduate college. So I graduated Towson University. And while I was at Towson, while I was in college, I was interning the whole time. I worked like 10 jobs when I was in college because I had to pay for my college. And I saw the opportunity to intern and learn from lots of different companies. My senior year, I ended up taking an internship from a person who was running an internet marketing company out of the guest room in her house. And everyone thought I was crazy. They're all going to work at these big agencies. They're all into this and that, where basically what they were doing was running creative back and forth all day and making coffee, like literally stuff like that. So when I started interning, I was working for a really small company, but I was doing everything. I was doing the ad buys on Yahoo. I was doing SEO. I was helping to set up websites. That's where I really got started in digital marketing. But in 2001, I decided to quit. I had left college, worked for a year, and I was doing okay, but I was a little bit older. I was like 25, and I'm like, you know what? I really want to travel, see the world, stuff like that. So I quit SEO entirely, and I moved to Japan to teach English, and I did a lot of really cool shit there, like studying Aikido and dressing like samurais and stuff like that. And I did not do any marketing. I basically did not touch the internet for a year and a half. I was teaching English, doing really well. I ended up meeting somebody and following her down to Brazil. And I was planning on doing the same thing in Brazil, hence the little carnival thing there, the one that doesn't make any sense out of all the photos. I was planning on doing the same thing in Brazil, so I went to a local English teaching school, and I said, hey, I'm an English teacher. I'd like to work for you. And they're like, great, we'll pay you $2 an hour. And I'm like, what? I was making X back in Japan. We're like, we're not Japan, we're Brazil. And then it hit me. I had followed this girl to Brazil. I'm living down there. I wanted to stay there. And so I hit up my old boss, who I was working for back in Maryland. And I started doing contracting work for her. And I was getting back into SEO. So when I had to get back into SEO, remember, like during this time, like in 2000, 2001, Google was not a big player. They were basically an experimental search engine. I had left, and as I had left, they had grown and become the biggest search engine in the world. And stuff like Hotbot and Excite and the things that I was optimizing for previously, like Lycos and things like that, they weren't really around anymore. And this had all changed in 2 years. So the fundamentals of SEO were still there that I was doing previously, but I had to relearn everything. So I started going to forums. And I'd go to a forum, and I'd ask questions, and I'd answer questions, and I'd write into email newsletters about search, because granted, there's no Facebook at the time, right? So I'm on all these forums, and I noticed one day that I'm giving them my content, and I'm learning in return, but what if I published my own site, wrote down my findings in SEO, and then people would come to me? So I called up my boss, and I told her about my idea. Like, look, I need you to pay me to build this site. Then we'll be partners in the site. Your agency will then get leads through the site, and we'll do amazing, because at the time, there was only Search Engine Watch, which wasn't really a blog. It was more of an online newsletter at the time. So I had this great idea. I pitched it to her. She told me no. She said, there are too many other search engine sites out there. It's not going to work. We need to focus on client stuff and affiliate sites. So I said, well, if you're not going to fund me and help me do this, is it okay if I do it myself? She said, yes. So here's tip number 1. Trust in yourself. If you have a great idea and you really feel in your gut it's going to work, do it. If it doesn't work, that's okay, but at least you tried. At least you created something. And at the beginning, when I was doing my research and just got started in blogging, I was on one of these forums. I started using SitePoint forums, which was, now it's Flippa, and they're more involved with domaining and stuff like that. But there were a lot of publishers on there that were just getting started. And one person's comment really stuck with me. I think it was, the blog that you start today can be the magazine of tomorrow, or something like that. And it really stuck with me, because it really meant that all I had to do was put in hard work, and if I tried and tried and tried and wrote and wrote and wrote and had a plan, it would probably work out. So I laid down my goals for SEJ, and these are the same goals that I had talked to my old boss at an agency about. and I just applied them to myself. So I was doing SEO work at the time as well, so I didn't really have to make any money in the beginning with it, but I put together a short-term goal of 1, establishing authority and establishing trust. 2, growing my own personal brand. And I knew if I spent time doing that, then down the road, that authority and trust could be put into me launching an SEO digital marketing services agency of my own, and the leads would flow through the site. Now, there was no AdSense or anything like that back then, so it was really hard to monetize. You had to put like flashing banners and punch the monkey banners and stuff like that on your site to make any money, and you'd make like 3 cents a day. So I figured that, hey, I'm going to build out this plan and try to keep on track as much as possible, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I really, really liked writing about search. I would get up every morning at like 7 a.m., 6 a.m., and granted I was in Brazil at the time, which is like 1 time zone ahead, and I try to beat everybody else out there, like writing about this or writing about news or writing about SEO tips. It was great. So this is the house where I started Search Engine Journal. It's a little shack in Brazil. I haven't been back there since I left, and I found it on Google Maps. Really, there was less weeds in the yard back then. But anyway, it was my ex's mom's house that we were staying in at the time. So, yeah, that's a whole different story. When I started SEJ, I started on Blogspot. So where I got the idea was around the same time Google had acquired Blogger and Blogspot, and blogging just took off. Previously, like, we live in a great age right now. We can just like launch a site in seconds, write something, and it's there. It used to be that you would go into Blogger to write a post, and you'd have to like upload it to the server, and it would take time and everything else. Or before that, you'd have to really know your stuff from a tech perspective to launch a website. So when Google bought Blogger, I'm like, this is going to be a big deal, right? So the first thing I did was, I think I went to GoDaddy or some kind of registry. I didn't go to Hostomania, sorry guys. But I went there and I searched for searchengineblog.com, and it was not available. Some other person had taken it. So at the time, there was a big argument if blogs were going to be called blogs because that's short for weblog, or journals because it's short for web journal. Blogs won out, but my second query was Search Engine Journal. And I really like the fact that I took that, because it almost established an authority from day one. Because journal sounds like Wall Street Journal, and it also sounds like medical journal. So it was a great brand. And if I've learned anything from following the Hoth, branding is everything. Like it's crazy. There's a Hoth guy running around the hotel and all this stuff going on. So branding is everything. So it helped me establish a brand from day one. But as you see, I was blogging on Blogspot, basically like every other blog out there. So I end up talking to this guy, and he's like, hey, we're currently testing this new blogging platform called B2. I'm like, B2? I've never heard of it. And he's like, do you want to check it out? We can transfer everything from Blogger over to B2. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I had to get a hosting agreement, and I had to get everything else. And then what I did was I transferred everything over to B2. It was beta tested at the time. It was really easy to post. I got indexed in Google News, and later B2 became WordPress. So I had a chance to beta test WordPress without even knowing it. We were one of the first commercial tech blogs at the time on the WordPress platform. But after I did this, and I moved it from searchenginejournal.blogspot.com over to searchenginejournal.com, I started getting more SEO traffic. And one day I got an email. And the guy said, look, I'd like to pay you $35 a month if you'll put my ad on your sidebar. I'm like, $35? Hell yeah, give me that right now. I can go buy dinner, I can go do anything, $35, because I wasn't doing any advertising at the time. I was playing around with affiliate marketing, right? So affiliate marketing I've never been good at. I always kind of break even. So yeah, I'm like, yeah, so I put the guy's ad there. And as soon as I put his ad there, I think his name was Michael Chen. He was like an internet marketing guru or something. As soon as I put his ad there, more people started contacting me. And one of them was a company called Blog Ads that was launching. So I put their ad there. And I started doing affiliate stuff with SearchFeed. And that kind of took off. So I kind of have like a timeline of designs here. This is actually probably my favorite search engine journal design. It was done in 2007 by a guy named Chris Pearson, who later launched a thesis blog platform. But as you see, the advertising started changing, right? So I started selling ads directly, banner ads directly, to clients like LookSmart, and then I started doing the pay-per-link stuff. So I was getting a lot of people that were contacting me being like, hey, look, if you put this link in your post, I'll give you $20, $50, whatever. A lot of them I said, yeah, because it was awesome to be able to do that. And then I got the idea, hey, instead of selling these links on my post to these companies, why don't I just sell them ads? So all these ads that you see here on the right-hand side, they were sponsors, they were ads, and they also were paid links. So at the time, that was completely fine. In like 2012, I think, Google put the smackdown on paid links a lot. You can still do it, but it was a little bit more out in the open back then. But as you can see, I was trying to figure out how to monetize the site all the time. And again, this is kind of pre-AdSense, pre-everything else. So, yeah. SEJ was going great. I had turned it into a six-figure blog. It was pretty much my full-time gig. And then I started going to conferences, like in 2007, 2008, and speaking. I was back in the U.S. I bought a condo in Tampa, up in Carrollwood. And I was living there, and I met this dude named Dave Snyder, who was speaking earlier today. So I met this dude named Dave Snyder. He was living in Deerfield Beach, and he was having this thing called Scary SEO. It was like this Halloween-themed SEO conference. Like, what the hell is this? And so I go over there, and after a long, long night and morning, we decided to merge our companies together. I was doing SEO consulting. He was doing social media and content. I had a lot of leads coming in. He had to scale out the business. So our idea was to take my company and take his company, mix them into one, call it Search and Social, which he had the domain for. I kept SEJ separate. For a long time, I considered it to be my pet project, my only site. But that's when I had time to spend working on it, right? So whatever venture I got into, I had a advertising company near here and some other stuff. But whatever venture I went into, I ended up just doing that on the services side for a while. Then Dave and I and some other people, 6 people altogether, decided to merge our agencies into something called Blue Glass. And then I took on additional partners with SEJ, Alpha Brand Media. So this is phase 2 of SEJ. This is like, here's the roller coaster going up. This is when the roller coaster goes down hard. All right? So with the Blue Glass thing, Dave and I, this guy named Jordan Casteller, Brent Satoris, a bunch of other guys, what we did, having never really run businesses before, except for like out-of-your-home SEO consulting, we decided to merge 4 different search companies together. Because our thought process was, if you merge 4 together, you're going to be 4 times bigger, people are going to come to you. We didn't think about the whole, hey, you're going to have 4 or 5 bosses, you're going to have 2 accountants, you're going to have 4 or 5 different SEO people, and then all of a sudden we had like too many employees, too many this, too many that. So what did? We ended up going out and acquiring another company called Three Dog Media, which my friend Greg Bozer and Dax Herrera had out in LA, which was a blessing, and I'll get to that in a minute. So all of a sudden, down here in Tampa, the company moved to Tampa because I was the only person with an office. So we ended up hiring in Tampa, over off of Bush Boulevard, behind the Publix, and trying to build up an agency that got on TechCrunch for the merger, that got on Search Engine Land and all these other publications, but never was really profitable. Now, what I did good was over at Alpha Brand Media, I ended up working with some folks that had large networks of hip-hop and shoe-oriented sites, which were doing really well. So you might think, hey, what do hip-hop and shoes have to do with Search Engine Journal? Well, that's a really good question. I haven't quite answered that yet. But we merged everything together there. We all had different percentages, and basically ran that as its own. That was another company. So I had this Blue Glass thing going on, and then I had this Alpha Brand Media thing going on. What happened was, all of a sudden, that 80-20 that I used to have, that was 80% publishing and 20% agency work, flip-flopped on me. So I had 80%, 90% agency work and about 10% publishing. I just didn't have the time to spend on Search Engine Journal. So after a bunch of fighting with the other officers at the Blue Glass Company, I left, along with Greg Bozer and Dax Herrera, and we started our own thing. And Blue Glass ended up falling apart. So here's a lesson. If you get involved with other folks in terms of business or partnerships, date before you get married, right? There's all kinds of ways to work together. Work together. That look together is like a mix between live together and work together. So you don't have to lurk together. You can do joint ventures, work together for a year on a project, see if you like each other, see how everything blends. When we did it, we just crammed in our businesses, and it was crazy. So what you'll probably find as your blog and publishing starts to get better, you're going to get offers. And just like the previous speaker, he doesn't want to sell his business, right? When people would ask me, what's your goal? Are you going to flip this, whatever? My goal was always, well, I'm lucky that I started this and it took off. I was expected to drive a cement truck somewhere when I was a kid. But I ended up building this thing and it took off, and why would I want to sell it? So I didn't do all the things right, but what I did was I kept SEJ away from a toxic venture and had a little bit of a safety net after that thing fell apart. And I still had the chance to build my authority, build my trustworthiness, and do all those goals that I had laid out in 2003. So, we're working together at Alpha Brand Media. And like I said, Alpha Brand Media was a bunch of hip-hop sites, shoe sites, affiliate sites, and then SEJ. Now, we did an internal audit with the company, because I had just been through all this stuff with the other thing, and we figured out that the hip-hop sites and the shoe sites and stuff like that, they were all making money, but they were basically, their profit margins compared to SEJ, traffic, ad revenue, and then time put into it was so messed up at the end of the day. And what we wanted to do was take Search Engine Journal and build it into something bigger. Since I had launched SEJ, Search Engine Land was launched, lots of different SEO sites, and then from the outside looking in, we saw TechCrunch take off. We saw TechMeme take off. We saw all of these other marketing and tech-oriented sites take off. And this is around the same time, too, when Mashable was getting investment from CNN, and BuzzFeed was turning from being just like a little joke site into a news site suddenly. And then Business Insider turned from being a business site into a joke site and news site, which I still don't understand. But we're like, hey, you know what? We've let SEJ coast for a couple of years while I was working on the agency thing and everything else. What if we got some capital into Alpha Brand Media to give us a little bit of a runway so we could operate and grow without cutting into the money that comes in every month from selling advertisements. So what we did was we took Sojones, all of our hip-hop sites, and then also we had a network called the Every Guide Network we had acquired a couple years previously, and we ended up putting them on Flippa and working with some site sellers to sell those. So we sold all those properties. We took that money, put it in the bank, and we're like, look, we're going to use this to make everything better at SEJ. So here are the challenges that we faced at Search Engine Journal after about 11 years of being in business, or 11 years after I created it. Growth had plateaued. So we kind of hit maybe, I don't know, the 300,000 people a month hitting the site range in 2007, 2008, and it just kind of always was around that range. All of our monetization was advertising based. So everything we made on the site was coming from AdSense or DFP, double click for publishers, or CPM based advertising. So $5, for every 1,000 impressions, $10 for every 1,000 impressions. And that was okay, but we always felt like we could make more because people were buying the ads on our site through other networks, and those networks were getting a cut, and these folks were getting a cut. So it was like, what if we just sold direct, like I used to? And then our editor turnover was high. So we probably had 5 different editors running editorial on SEJ over the course of 5 years. Some of them were really good SEOs, but they weren't necessarily good editors. So they knew what they were writing about, and they knew what other people were writing about, right? They knew the topic matter, but they weren't great at grammar or things like that. And then we had a problem with writers spamming up the content with links. So we're looking at the content on the site, and a lot of guest contributors. I'm like, why is this dude writing about, why is there a link on here to a title loan company? Or why is there a link on here to that or to that? And then you see those emails like every once in a while. It's like, hey, my name is, whatever. I want to sell you links on Huffington Post and this and that. Well, we started seeing them come through at Search Engine Journal, right? So not only were we getting kind of snubbed on the advertising side of things by working with networks, but the people that wrote for us were contributing content to us. We were happy we were getting content, but then they're selling all the links. And this is after Google smacked down with link stuff with Penguin. And so around 2014, 2015, we decided we either needed to clean it up and turn it into something bigger, fix everything, see what we could do with that capital that we had just gotten in, or kind of just let it ride and let it die a slow, painful death and get involved with something else. So we decided to grow. So here are the solutions. We started treating Search Engine Journal like we would treat a client and building an in-house marketing team. That sounds pretty basic, but if you think about it, sometimes it's really easy to focus on one thing that's working really well and kind of push off the other thing that is your property. And I'll be honest, again, after 10, 12 years, I was kind of tired of trying to always fix something or whatever. I'm not a serial entrepreneur like Mark, but I love that high when you're launching something brand new. There's nothing like it in the world. You're putting out this new website and seeing how it works, and it takes off, and you're getting money. You can do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. But then sometimes there's a lot of entrepreneurs that once they do that, that's it. That's what they love to do. So that's the whole build and flip mentality that you see a lot of bloggers doing. So we made the commitment as a team to treat everything like we would treat a client. We ended up trimming the fat, so we got rid of writers. We got strict with them as well. People that were selling the links that we found doing stuff, we would just ask them straight out, look, you don't have to lie to me here. I'm an SEO. I do this stuff too, but are you selling these links on SEJ? And if we knew that they were selling them and they told us no, we would fire them or not let them contribute anymore. If they said yeah, we'd give them a little grace period. We'd be like, okay, listen, can't do this anymore. We got to clean it up, yada, yada, yada. And really put together some writing guidelines and rules that everyone had to follow that weren't being defined earlier either, right? So I don't blame the SEO. I don't blame you guys for dropping links or whatever. I blame us for not putting together rules, right? And not necessarily enforcing them. And if any of you start scaling out your blog by bringing in third-party writers, keep an eye on stuff like that, because stuff can get out of control. It's not necessarily they're going to start selling links on your blog, but having an editorial procedure is something that is good for them, and it's also good for you to define for your business, and that's what it is at the end of the day. We ended up hiring an amazing editor. So there was a guy named Danny Goodwin who had previously edited for Search Engine Watch when it was a larger site, and ClickZ, and before that, his background was in newspaper editing. So he knew how to run a team. He was more money than we had paid people previously, but he was not a consultant that was trying to edit. He was an editor by trade who knows internet marketing. So we hired Danny to be our editor, and we empowered him as well. I'll get into that later. We developed a WordPress plugin called Link Patrol. And we sold some of these out there. We marketed it for a while and sold it. But we built it first as an internal tool to scan and pick up unnatural links and link trends on your site. Then we check them out and see if people were trying to sell them. So if we saw a bunch of title loan links and stuff like that, Link Patrol would pick it up, and we'd then just hit a button and erase them or no follow. It's funny, like we'd no follow it and see how long it would take the person to email us, right? And ask why their links were no followed. And then we encourage development of a Philippines team. I'm a big fan of outsourcing. I think we live in a global economy. All this talk about Bitcoin and blockchain and stuff like today proves that. And I had always, in a lot of my companies, had folks offshore in the Philippines shadow my staff. So basically giving everyone a virtual assistant. And luckily, a lot of people have horror stories with outsourcing through Upwork and things like that, but we made really good friends with someone that has a outsourced consulting service called freelancing.ph. And she helped us out a lot with that. So those are the solutions. Here's where we are today. Great looking site, great design, yada, yada, yada. We've been able to hire staff writers. So this guy, Roger Monty, he was doing SEO before I was. And he was always a big writer for Webmaster World and stuff like that. And he was contributing some stuff to SEJ. And in our Facebook group for writers, which is a good idea, if you manage multiple writers, start a Facebook group for them. They can get together, they can talk about things, everything else, and go from there. Am I talking with my hands too much? No. Okay. Okay. Okay, good. All right. So Facebook group for writers is awesome. All right. It's this awesome that everyone back there was just doing this with their hands. So Roger Monty and a guy named Matt Southern, they're our staff writers. They're paid. And then we do a lot of user-generated content from people that we trust that contribute, and Danny manages all of that. And then we sell ads to the Hoth, right? So in every SEO, this is actually animated, because when we first started working with the Hoth and they were doing this, they did a tattoo contest. And Clayton's like, hey, we're not getting any clicks. I'm like, dude, it's because you're advertising a tattoo contest on an SEO site. And now the Hoth monster, it's animated. He does this with the club while someone's reading. So it's really cool. So we got the Hoth on most of our pages. And like I said, we're nurturing an offshore team. So we have a team of about 7 or 8 folks in the Philippines that have been with us for 3 years, 4 years, even longer. And what we did was we started empowering them to not feel like some secret outsourced team that no one knows about, but we started hey, posting things on Search Engine Journal about us expanding our Philippines team, having them write about what it's like to work for SEJ. Because in the States, we're a virtual company. We don't have an office. We don't have a really cool office. And we're never going to win Best Place to Work 2018 in St. Pete like the Hoth is going to do this year. But what we can do is put together that similar environment for everyone that works virtually. Because I love working virtually, personally. I've done it for a long time. I feel like I'm more productive when I'm working in my home office or something like that. And there's a lot of other people like that as well. And we encouraged our Philippines team to start doing meetups. Because there's a lot of really good SEOs in Manila and throughout the Philippines. So we're like, hey, they approached us. They're like, hey, can we do a meetup? And we're like, sure. Not only can you do a meetup, but we'll set up a Facebook page for it. We'll promote it. We'll boost it to folks that live in the Philippines that are into SEO, and maybe they'll come to it. And it's worked really well. And I think it's really helped with retention, right? Because it's really easy to outsource or hire a VA and be like, hey, do this, do this, do this. But by working with them and treating them like part of the team, which they are, it's really helped with retention. So we got stuff pretty handled on the editorial side. But we had hired a sales guy out of New York, and we were paying him a hybrid of hourly plus commission, and he wasn't really selling anything. And he'd bring these little cupcake deals to us. So I'm like, I can't deal with this anymore. We got everything fixed. I'm going to take over sales. So I took over sales, and I've been in this industry for a long time, so I started just like, there's a lot of people, for some reason, in SEO and maybe across the board that are kind of afraid to sell, right? They're not like the Hoth team, or they're not like whoever. So I've always, quite honestly, I was a little bit afraid to sell too. But I started making these pitches. I started emailing people that I knew, and I was like, hey, I don't want to bother you, but at first I was like, oh, I don't want to bother you, but can you just look at this? But now I'm like, we're launching this. Check it out right now. It's awesome. So we did direct selling to circumvent the percentage that Google was taking from our advertisers by running AdSense on our site. So instead of us getting like a $4 CPM, we're now able to get like a $12 CPM because we're buying and selling direct. And we had an awesome project manager named Jessica who I promoted to be underneath me in business development. Because I'm also running an agency, so I don't have time to sell all the time. And she turned out to be amazing. So again, it's about empowering people. Now she runs sales. Her and Clayton are back and forth on mail and the phone all the time, thinking of new things. And our goal was to move 85% of our site's revenue to a demand gen and lead-based initiative by this year, by 2018. Meaning that instead of just having advertising there, we're collecting consumer data of people that want to buy the tools that the folks and services that the folks that we're working with are selling. So what we started doing in classic marketing fashion was I started doing all this native advertising and direct advertising on the site, kind of getting outside of the box, sponsoring webinars, sponsoring posts like the Hoth on there earlier. And so I did a webinar on going native. So it was basically a webinar on how we had changed our advertising from being ad-based to being more sponsorship partner-based. And at the end of the day, it was just a big sales pitch. We also launched shopsej.com, where there's a lot of companies that they don't want to review contracts and get on the phone and sign off, so they can just go to shopsej.com and click and buy. And it's been so surprising to see the amount of companies that are just clicking and buying advertising. There's a couple of other marketplaces that we do have our ads on, but if someone inquires, we'll just send them the link to Shop SEJ, and then we see that they're buying, and then we get on the phone to talk to them some more because we know that they've already bought, they're already a customer, then let's build the relationship. Pro tip, nothing beats work ethic, right? So by doing this, by renovating the site, changing the sales component of the site, and making all of these changes, it's so cliche, but it was just a question of rolling up your sleeves and spending 3 months, 4 months, breaking up everything and putting it back together the way that you intended to. And quite honestly, I kind of felt like I did back in 2003 when I started the site, right? So we had kind of fallen down for a while. Morale does go down from time to time, and this kind of brought everything back up, actually creating and building something, which gets us into phase 3. So I'm not sure if you've noticed, but there was a lot of news before the holidays of how CNN had invested in Mashable, and then they basically dumped it for pennies on the dollar. Also, BuzzFeed valuation was going down dramatically. Business Insider, a lot of these publications that had gotten a lot of investment early on, that were just basically publications that depended upon Facebook shares and eyeballs to sell advertising, started to really lose that momentum. And as a publisher, this scared us because we saw that these companies that we had started to emulate, like BuzzFeed and Huffington Post and Business Insider, were really starting to lose. Like Huffington Post is basically being slowly shut down. All this stuff is happening right now because of all the investment that they had previously. We had been lucky enough to not take on an investment partner. We had assets that we could sell off to bring capital in to do all this work. So we were lucky in that regard. So what we did was, or my plan, was to change Search Engine Journal from a blog and publishing company to a customer acquisition marketing platform or a customer acquisition solution. Why? Because really anyone that was working off of marketing themselves as being a publisher was starting to lose. And what we want to do, this is the whole demand gen thing, is bring in solutions and bring in the business to our partners, right? Because if they're not getting that, then it's just not worth it. And that's just fancy talk for selling leads versus selling ads. So what we did is we took on an ebook initiative. Ebook is such an old word, but it's such a great thing. By taking the posts that we had on the site, crowdsourcing question and answers to our writers and our audience, we've been putting together content for years, right? And as a blogger, you start to think, hey, I'm a blog, but we have 10,000 pages of great content. Why not take some of that and put that into ebooks that can not only be downloaded, but you can go to Amazon. Anyone can go to Amazon right now and publish a book. I think you can even publish a hardback book right now. But so that's the next plan after this. But with our ebooks, what we do is in order to download it, you have to put in your email and information, company information. And we work with partners that then get that info. They have marketing messages in the ebook. And if they have a sales team set up, they can contact those people knowing that, hey, they downloaded the link building ebook. They work for a small agency looking to outsource links. Hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm your link building solution. You just read about me in the SEJ ebook. Let's set up a time. Also, we do this with sponsored webinars as well. Everyone that signs up to do a webinar puts in all of their information. And then during the webinar, like we had with Clayton, he'll ask things like, do you want to work with a Hoth? Or do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And at the end of the day, he gets a spreadsheet and a list of people that want to buy video content. And that is a much better solution for our advertisers and for us than slopping an ad on the sidebar and hoping that it works. And we also do sponsored podcasts as well. And what I like about this too, and we didn't really think about this while we were doing it, but we're not just a blog anymore, right? We're a media company. Well, actually, we're a customer acquisition solution. But we're a media company. We're able to merge all these forms of media that we put together, whether it's video, live webinars, posts, ebooks, podcasts, all with the same goal to funnel those leads and value down to our sponsors and partners. And it's been great because it's given us, again, the ability to reinvest that extra capital. We're going to have our best year this year, by far. But reinvest that capital that we're bringing in back in the quality. So again, we have an empowered editor on our team, right? Runs our internal staff and manages guest writers. We have an SEO news writer, SEO marketing writer, a sales staff, full-time graphic designer, full-time dev, copy editors. And it's just basically putting together a system and rinsing and repeating it. Copy editors as well. First of all, when we first hired our first copy editor, I hated her. Because I'm like, it's my blog. I'm going to write this the way I want. It's a blog. It's not a book. So there's typo and grammar stuff. That's fine, you know. And she's like, no, you have to do this because this is the guidelines that we set. And you have to set the example, right? So again, if you're not great at copy, then hiring a copy editor is fantastic because then you don't get those comments that just eat at you like, oh, you use there instead of there or this or that in your comments section. And again, reinvesting into the blog, then rinsing and repeating. So I put this together today. I really like it. I'm not really one to boast that much, but I'm going to right now. So Search Engine Watch, which was the leader in SEO news coverage when I got started, they've basically been abandoned, more or less. They've been acquired and reacquired over the years. They've lost a lot of their writers, readership, and we have their old editor. Search Engine Land, which Danny Sullivan started after Search Engine Watch, and his team was the leader in the space. Since, over the past year, he's left the company. He's gone to Google. A lot of the writers and editors have left. They're kind of treading water right now. Also, Search Engine Land and Search Engine Watch are both owned by conference and vertical content companies. So the parent company that used to own Search Engine Watch did SEO conferences called SES, Search Engine Strategies. They also did like Forex trading conferences and lots of different publications. Same with Search Engine Land. It used to be part of Internet.com and then everything else. We were the only one that was bootstrapped and started from nothing. So as you see from the Alexa data, and this is the same in Quantcast and some other data places, while they've been going down, this really illustrates everything I was just talking about actually. So while they've been going down over the past year, we've had ups and downs, but we're the only one that's growing out of the comparison. So that was kind of cool to see. I saw that today. And again, never forget where you came from or who your friends are, who helped you along the way. So, I've known Mark and Clayton for years. I knew Mark back when he was doing some of his old linking stuff. I actually started working with them because I was emailing him about some event coming up in St. Pete, and he's like, hey, man, why don't I sponsor your conference? So I'm like, that's a great idea, Mark. We'll send you an invoice. So Hoth has turned into a great partner with us. So we did this year is we're sending out client gifts. And someone on my staff is like, oh, why don't we send a cookie basket? I'm like, no. You don't send these guys a cookie basket. You send them a championship belt. Yeah. So we custom made a championship belt with this company that custom makes trophies and belts. I never knew that custom made belts were a thing. Sent it to Mark Clayton and the team over the holidays. And then last week, when I was hosting a webinar with Clayton on their video program, which is amazing, Hulk Hogan takes the camera from Clayton and starts talking to the SEJ people. And he's like, look, brother, you better check out what the Hoth has to sell, and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what is going on here? The Hawkster is just taking over our SEO webinar. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff starts popping up in the chat during the webinar and everything else. This is amazing. So anyway, later in the day, Clayton sends me a picture of the Hawkster holding the belt that we sent them. So I just thought that was pretty incredible, back and forth. And that's it. So thank you very much. If you want to, you can follow me on Twitter. And we got about 10 minutes for Q&A.
All right. Has anybody got any questions I can pass the mic to? Just raise your hand. Okay, right here.
I don't even know if this is a fully formed question yet, so I apologize for rambling. But one of the things that I've noticed with you and some of the other speakers are just benefiting from timing and kind of where you were at the time when certain developments were happening within sort of internet space, like being one of the first people on WordPress, for example. So given those advantages and having a little bit of hindsight behind you, how does that affect the advice you give new people who are starting that don't have the same luxury of kind of entering the space as a pioneer?
So you're right. Timing was a blessing, right? I saw the opportunity and took it. And if I hadn't done that, I don't know if I could do it again. And if I did do it again, I don't know if it would be at the same level. And then also there was other timing as well. So there's two things. One is, the timing thing was a lot of luck put in. And there was also the ability to jump on it. And then, as you saw, there were the ups and downs and trying to build it back up, but you're building an established brand back up, right? So you have a base there. I'm working on I ask this to myself all the time, like, could I do it again? Do I have the chops to put something like this back? Can I put this together or something new together and get the same success? So I kind of do that from a client standpoint, and I take on a lot of clients that are startups because of that reason. It's fun to see something grow. Also, I have a couple of projects that I'm working on right now. So I started going bald a long time ago, but I accepted it over the past couple of years. So I bought baldbadass.com, and I launched a Facebook group called Bald Badass Facebook group, and I started doing advertising targeting the fans of Headblade. You familiar with that? It's like a Matchbox car with a razor. And I used it once, and I sliced up my head. I never used it again. But I knew that was like, how do I get bald people? Like, it's not an attribute in Facebook, right? So, like, how do I get bald people to join? So I started doing advertising to that. And I'm planning on doing it, like some lotion to put on your head, some sunscreen, or a headband for the gym, right? Because you don't have hair to catch your sweat on the way down. But what I noticed was, like, when I started doing this, and I'll upload things, people start replying with their pictures of them in the gym, or their pictures of them, like how they shave their head and stuff like that. I also I'm involved with another venture, got the domain MoscowMule.com. So we're building that up as well. And it's kind of timing, but it's not. But yeah, thanks for that question, because it's a big deal. Now, what's the opportunity right now? Blockchain, right? Bitcoin, all of that is a great opportunity. Who knows how long it's going to stick around? I have no idea myself, because I don't have any Bitcoin either. There's all kinds of new stuff popping up, and I've launched so many new things over the years that didn't take off, so this one kind of did. I had the Viagra blog, which was taken away by the pharmaceutical company after I launched it. I had a blog search engine, which I ended up selling way too early. So always trying to launch stuff and get new again. Yes, thanks. Next question?
So we're in the legal services field. We do SEO. And the question is, and I had asked the last speaker as well, with like these directories like Yelp and Avvo and Justia, and there's so many other ones for like attorney services, do you think, is there a way we can outrank them? Because the last speaker said, hey, no, actually Google wants to. Yeah,
I agree with everything that Dave said.
Okay, you do.
So yeah, featured snippets are a huge opportunity. Writing for that. The ability to target locally, like starting your own sites locally. I do a little bit in the home investment space as well. So there's major directories, and then there's a lot of local sites to compete with. But Google's opening up new opportunities all the time, like the featured snippet thing, and sometimes you're able to jump on top of that faster than the other person does.
What do you think about keyword branding? So let's say Sacramento, like if someone needs a Sacramento criminal defense attorney, calling yourself Sacramento criminal defense attorney on Google, branding to the keyword. Any thoughts on that? Yeah.
I've seen instances where putting that in your radio spots, putting that in your commercials, putting that on offline advertising, like the sides of buses. Like, is 1-800-ASK-GARY still around, by the way? Who's from Tampa or St. Pete in the room? Yeah, still there. Okay, so 1-800-ASK-GARY, like, that's the one thing I really remember from, like, local advertising. And their search volume, if you look at SEMrush, target them outside of Tampa St. Pete, and then look at your targeting into Tampa St. Pete, search volume through the roof. Why? Because of all the radio stuff that they're doing. With a beauty school chain in Texas that I work with, they do a lot of Spotify advertising, and we tell them, hey, look, a lot of it's supporting what ranks already, but we tell them, look, just tell these people to go to Google and search for Dallas Beauty School, and then they'll find Ogle there, right? So it increases the amount of natural searches and people clicking, which increases their brand queries. And not really, but yeah, increases their brand queries to a degree, and increases their click-through rate. So try that as well. Even if you rank number 2 or number 3, because they've already heard the commercial, they've already heard the advertising. Say, hey, look, go to Google, search for this, scroll down, you'll find us. What else are they going to do? Search on Google and not find you or find you anyway, right? So just tell them to do that. Say, hey, scroll down, we're at the bottom. You can find us down there.
We actually did that with a brand new website that we made. I ran a Facebook ad. I told them to submit your information here. After submitting it, we got 70 requests. On that email marketing campaign we made, we told them to type in this keyword and scroll to the 3rd page, and you'll find us. Within 3 days, we got like the 3rd position on first page.
Yeah.
Like that. So that's powerful.
It's behavioral targeting. And that's the value of fancy word for it is omni-channel marketing. But if you can take the goals that you have in SEO and apply those to email marketing, apply those to social, what you were just talking about, that's a winner chicken dinner. All right.
Anybody else?
The back.
You got Colt in the back.
In general, what are your thoughts on like voice search with the voice assistants, Google Assistant, Siri, Alexa? Do you think it's going to affect the amount of queries that are going per month through Google, and if you can even optimize for something like that in terms of getting your brand out there?
So personally, I can't stand it because every time I ask Alexa or Siri for one thing, they answer me back with something else, and I'll be in my office on the phone or doing a webinar, and Alexa pops up and then starts talking to me, right? Have you seen the South Park episode that was just made to make people mad that have Alexa? So the whole episode they're like, Alexa do this, Alexa do that, and then everyone's Alexa started going crazy in their houses. I think from a search perspective, I actually like it because I've been targeting natural language search for a long time, getting away from just doing keyword, who goes and searches for I don't know, I'm just trying to think of an example, bottled water, What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, even when I search, what's the best type of bottled water? What's the best type of vodka for making a Moscow Mule? What's the best way to do this? And Google put out a study recently that what's the best and how-to queries have, I think, doubled over the past 2 years, specifically because of voice search and just we're past that stage of everything being new, right? It's something that we do every day. So I'm sure a lot of consumers, they'll go to Google and search for a term over and over again, not see what they're looking for, and then search something differently. And it's also a trend where, what do you call it, the knowledge of the group or something like that. So some people don't want to buy because they see an ad or because something ranks. What they want to do is go to a site like G2 Crowd, or top 10 this, or top 10 that, and read reviews, right? And I think that's really something to get into in terms of new stuff, is looking for a niche or a product that you really love and reviewing that product a lot, doing demos, things like that, because that's growing because of voice search. And there's a really good tool called answerthepublic.com. And what it will do is you go to it and you put in a keyword, and it will basically scrape the Google people also searched for and stuff like that information. So you'll get graphs of natural questions which support that keyword strategy. So I believe in optimizing for the topic as opposed to the key term, unless it's a branded local key term like you were talking about.